Hi guys, welcome back to the show. Thank y'all so much for watching. Thank you for making me part of your day. We got a lot to get into today, guys. There's a lot going on in sports right now. Tonight is game 3 of the NBA Finals with Indiana and Oklahoma City tied at 1 apiece. I'm very interested to see the outcome of this game. I'm pulling for the Pacers, pulling for the upset. And there's a lot of talk right now about these finals and the ratings being low and what to make of that. I think there are several reasons why the ratings are not as good as they were in the past. But I don't think that the market size of the two cities, Oklahoma City and Indiana, have much to do with it. If you take a look back historically, the finals with the highest ratings was Chicago and Utah. But Utah had stars: John Stockton, Karl Malone. Chicago obviously had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman. So it's not necessarily the market size that is important, it's the stars that are within the markets. When LeBron was in Cleveland, for example, we didn't complain about Cleveland having a small market. So the NBA is very star driven, much more star driven than the NFL. But the stars have to be located in the proper cities for there to be an overall national interest in the finals. So right now we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Tyrese Halliburton, who are young players, and they're not very large entities yet nationally, but they're certainly evolving and growing. They're very mature players, and they're great, very skilled players. But what's interesting to think about, guys, is nowadays everyone in the NBA is rich. I mean, the assistant coaches, the whole front office, even the water boy is probably making good money. Everyone is making a bag. Back in the 80s and 90s, you had to compete for your piece of the pie. Players were a lot more combative. You saw a lot more fights in the 80s and 90s. It was interesting, fascinating basketball. But the players weren't as skilled. So nowadays you have a lot more skilled players, better coaching, better nutrition, better sleep schedules. I mean, players are going to sleep, at decent hours. But it doesn't necessarily make for fascinating personalities, fascinating basketball. And that's one of the areas where I think the NBA is lacking in terms of overall viewership right now, is this kind of business like approach to everything. When I watched game 1 and 2 of the NBA finals, it just seemed very business like. But I mean, I think Oklahoma City is a very business-like organization to begin with. I mean, their general manager and their owner are top-notch. So they're a very, you know, calculated organization to begin with. However, I think when you have such a matured and skilled and refined players, that does not always make for very fascinating personalities. And part of the viewership, the lack of viewership, is people are just not captivated with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, Shai Gilgeous is a very nice man. He's not shy, but he's not very outspoken. He's not very controversial. He's a nice guy, and he's a very efficient player. But he kind of reminds me of like Tim Duncan, but with a little bit more color. But I think where viewership could increase is if you get some personalities in the future of the NBA, like Michael Jordan or LeBron or Steph Curry or Magic Johnson or Kobe. I mean, those kinds of personalities are captivating, and people latch on to those kinds of players. And nowadays, it seems like everyone likes each other. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton right now, very nice guy, always got a smile on his face. and just seems like the nicest person in the world. But he lacks that combativeness, that chip on his shoulder. Um, and it just seems like everyone is just friends with each other, which is good. But I mean, there have been documentaries made of the fights in the 80s and 90s, and documentaries of players going broke. And nowadays, when you have everyone making so much money, it doesn't necessarily equate to fascinating, interesting basketball. It's very businesslike. It's almost formal, not dull, but it's just businesslike. It's business, and that's where we are in the NBA. We've made that transition to the players, the stability of the players, and it's interesting to think about if you look at it with a historical lens. Another area where I think it's interesting, and I kind of give Adam Silver a little criticism on this subject, is his tendency to kind of marginalize college basketball. And what I mean by that is a lot of players who get drafted and come into the NBA, more than half, we really don't know who they are, what their personality is like, and it kind of takes them a while for their character to develop. I mean, even right now with Shea Gilgeous and Tyrese Halliburton, who have been in the league for several years now, their character is still developing. And it's with that development and that evolution that people start to tune in and become fans. Whereas in the NFL, players in college football have played for maybe 5 seasons, and they've already played so many games. People have a better feel for their personality, for their strengths, for their weaknesses, and by the time they get to the NFL, they've already got a lot more experience, a lot more games played, and people are much more interested to see them play, like a Baker Mayfield. I mean, by the time he was in the NFL, I mean, he was already a household name virtually. And this year we have a Cooper Flag, but he's kind of an outlier. I think the college football and NFL does a lot better at developing the players and the personalities, which ultimately elevates the viewership. And, in the NBA, you have the G League, the developmental league, which is good, but there's no, G League or developmental league in the NFL. So it's an interesting dynamic there with the players in college sports coming into college football, or the NFL or NBA. So another area that I want to speak on during this show is the NBA draft lottery. Now, a lot of people are speculating that it's rigged. And right now in our country, a lot of people have a little mistrust with large institutions, whether it be the White House, whether it be something like the vaccine, or schools, or universities. There's a lot of distrust with large corporations. And whether that has merit behind it, that's not my concern. But it seems like everyone is quick to say that something is rigged nowadays. So, with the draft lottery, the Dallas Mavericks received the number one overall draft pick, which means that they will likely pick Cooper Flag, and he will become the next Dallas Maverick. So, how the NBA draft lottery works is it's essentially a raffle, meaning the team with the best odds, that does not necessarily mean you're going to win the raffle. So, what the NBA is doing with this is they're trying not to reward tanking teams. So, historically, teams will begin to tank, and that means they begin to lose games on purpose in order to secure a high draft pick in the draft lottery. teams now, the league now is not doing that. They're not rewarding those teams for tanking because it's not a good look for the viewership. It's not a good look for the NBA $76 billion NBC deal that they just did. It's simply a horrible look for a lot of teams to be tanking. So therefore, the team with the worst record at the end of the season has never won the number 1 overall draft pick, I believe. So a lot of people say that it's rigged. Well, if it's rigged, why would the NBA want to send Cooper Flag to Dallas? Dallas is such a football heavy town. Wouldn't they want to send Cooper Flag to like a Chicago or a Philadelphia or a New York? And even 5 years ago, they sent Zion Williamson to New Orleans. You really think if it was rigged, the NBA would want to send Zion Williamson to New Orleans? No, they would not. So the NBA draft lottery is not rigged. It's perfect. A lot of people aren't fans of it, and I can understand that. However, I think it's going to be exciting to see Cooper Flag join the Dallas Mavericks, and I can't wait to see what comes of that. Now, another thing I want to talk about on the show is in the finals, in Game 1, there was a lack of representation on the court. So historically, you would see the Larry O'Brien trophy on the court, some NBA Finals logos here and there along the sidelines and the baselines. Well, in Oklahoma City in Game 1, there was nothing on the court. There was just a little NBA Finals logo on the TV broadcast. And I noticed it right away. I mean, I was like, no way the Finals trophy is not on the court, because growing up, there was always some kind of identification that it was, in fact, the NBA Finals on the court. And there's been a lot of talk about this on social media. In fact, when Game 1 started, there was so much talk on social media that there was no representation that the NBA tried to do a little quick fix where they put like a hologram of the Finals trophy on the court for the broadcast, the ESPN and ABC broadcast. And it was so bad that it had some Photoshop errors that were very evident throughout the broadcast. And it was just a very bad look. And Adam Silver addressed this. He agreed that fans appreciated this, and looking back on highlights from years past, you can always see some kind of identification that it was the Finals. And he agreed that he understood, and so he's going to look into it. So I'm interested to see in Game 3, now that the Finals is switching cities, host cities going to Indiana, what they're going to do. Because I mean, I love growing up watching the Finals, seeing the Larry O'Brien trophy on the court and just the NBA Finals logo. I mean, it was like a Michelob Ultra logo on the baseline. That was it. It was almost like watching a game in the middle of December. You had no idea that if you were not a basketball fan, and you would not have known that this was the NBA Finals you were watching. So interested to see what they do tonight. But in that same breath, another thing that Adam Silver has done away with in the finals since his 10-year start in 2014 was the national anthem and introduction of all the players was always broadcasted live for everyone to see. And it hasn't been since 2014, which I did not know that. But the national anthem it's got to be broadcasted. I mean, it's part of the experience. You get to see your favorite players in that solemn state of mind right before the action, the calm before the storm, if you will. I love watching the national anthem and seeing all the players with their heads bowed and, deep meditation right before the game. As a player, I mean, that's a very sacred time right there where you're just getting your mental right, and that's got to be broadcasted. And along with the introduction of the players. I mean, let's just imagine if the Super Bowl, for example, decided to do away with broadcasting the national anthem. I mean, fans would not like that. I mean, it's literally part of the experience. It makes you feel like you're there in the arena or stadium. So yeah, Adam Silver, there's some things that need to be tweaked. So all in all, I think it's not the big market. It's more so the stars in each market, and in that same breath, the character development. So players only spending a year or so in college basketball, they come to the NBA. Well, maybe they weren't ready. They go to the G League. Okay, they figure things out in the G League. They come back to the NBA. You look up, they've been in the league for 6, 7 years, and they're not large entities. Whereas in the NFL, I feel like the process is much quicker as far as making a name for yourself, establishing kind of some fans to increase the overall viewership. Um, and then, yeah, just the lack of overall representation of the NBA Finals. It the court was, I mean, it had no aura, you know, and it's something that definitely needs to be corrected. And I saw a fan who left a very uh, thought-provoking comment on social media. If you look at the in-season tournament courts, I mean, those courts are decked out, all types of designs and extravagant colors, and you know, totally different than the regular season courts. And that's just for an in-season tournament. And the NBA couldn't even put together something for the NBA Finals. So that was interesting to me. So yeah, the draft lottery, the Dallas Mavericks, Cooper Flag. I'm excited. I think it's going to be good for Cooper and the Mavs, but it's not rigged, you guys. But it does seem like there's a lot of distrust in the country right now. So I'm not here to say whether that's true or false, but it is what it is. So right now there's a lot going on in college basketball too. So the NIL, I think, has kind of saved college basketball in a way. Now players are staying longer in college basketball and they're not going to the NBA as quickly, because if they stay, due to their ability to now make money off of their name, image, and likeness, they could potentially make more money staying in college than they would have if they decided to go to the NBA. Now, obviously, this applies to like a select few players who fall in that bracket of, you're good in college, but you necessarily wouldn't be a pro athlete. So like a Cooper Flag would be a total outlier, because certainly, he's going to make money in both college and the NBA. He made $8 million last year at Duke, FYI, just off of his name, image, and likeness. But now we're seeing like teams like Auburn and teams like Kentucky holding on to some of their key pieces from last year. In fact, Otega Oweh, who was Kentucky's arguably their best player last year, is returning for his senior season. Otega Oweh and his athletic ability was one of my favorite players on the team last year. I mean, his ability to just go the length of the court and finish athletically around the rim in a number of different ways was very impressive. And he had 2 buzzer beaters last year that just went right down to the end and let it go as soon as the buzzer went off against Oklahoma. So Otega Oweh's coming back. We were able to secure some European pieces as well. And that's another thing about college basketball is, with the NIL taking over, a lot of the academies in Europe are considering shutting down because they're not able to afford the NIL, because America is simply purchasing all of the uh, popular European players, and they're having them come over here and play college basketball. I mean, Illinois University is going to have 5 starters. All 5 starters are European players. I mean, we saw like Big Z in Kentucky. He was from Croatia. His brother came over. And Kentucky has, I think, 2 European players coming on this year. So it's interesting because Europe has some great basketball academies where they develop their players, but they are legitimately considering shutting down due to the amount of money that the NIL has in America, and their ability to literally purchase the European players. So, and with that being said too, it kind of goes into my character development take too, because if players are staying longer in college, and let's say a player plays a couple March Madnesses, then by the time he goes to the NBA, we have a better feel for him, like a Zach Edey. Zach Edey had a great college career. By the time he made it to the NBA, well, fans were excited to see him. So, which would increase overall viewership once he's in the NBA. So, and which is the difference that I'm getting at between the college football and college basketball, because in college football players stay much longer, 4 years. They play 65 games within that span. Well, in college basketball they just stay 1 year, and so now with the NIL, players are staying longer. It's going to be good for their overall development, and uh, their overall fans and viewership once they get into the NBA. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of why I think these NBA finals are not as uh, entertaining, maybe. And it's definitely a basketball die-hard kind of series, you know. But it's interesting if you look at really historically. I know I keep saying that, but back in the 80s and 90s, I mean, players were a lot more combative. The basketball was a lot more fascinating. Um, and nowadays, the players are more skilled, yes. The nutrition is better, the coaching is better. I mean, hell, they're even going to bed on time, sleeping more, but it doesn't necessarily make for fascinating characters, fascinating personalities. It's very businesslike. And, the players come into the league already having a little bit of money with the NIL, which was unprecedented back in the 80s and 90s, where they had to really work for a piece of the pie, which in turn made them more combative, made the basketball games more fascinating, entertaining. Um, and now, players are making so much money, so much bread, that some would say it's not as fascinating, and the personalities are not as fascinating. So it's interesting to think about. It really is. But let's see what else I have for y'all. Got a lot today, you guys. Bear with me. So I'm a little surprised too that Anthony Edwards kind of didn't emerge this NBA playoffs, because we want Ant to be the MVP. I mean, with his verticality and his just ability to captivate the audience. See, Anthony Edwards is an example of a fascinating personality. He kind of leans into it, whereas a Shai Gilgeous, who is the MVP, he's not as colorful. So it's that kind of dynamic that I'm getting at. We as a people, we want Ant to be the MVP, but Shai is the MVP. And part of that is age. Shai is 26, Ant is 23. So, Ant still has some volatility to his game. He still has some refining and maturing to do. And another area of critique of Shai is, his play style. It's very it's business-like. I mean, just the way he plays is business-like. And some would say he doesn't entertain us completely. I mean, he's not dunking over people the way that like a Derrick Rose did, or Russell Westbrook did per se. He's a pro, and he has a complete tool belt, and he has so many layers to his game. But I think a lot of people kind of give Shai a little slack is his ability to not captivate us entirely. Um, Texas, so a little bit of college football news for y'all. Texas and Ohio State announced that they are going to be facing one another in week one of the college football season. So that's going to be a great rematch between the Buckeyes and the Longhorns, who faced off in the college football playoffs. This is going to be interesting for Arch Manning, who will get the nod as the starter. I'm excited to see that. I think it's great for television, great for college basketball. Two dynamic programs who face off in the college football playoff are going at it. So I can't wait for week one of the college football playoffs. And going back to my NBA take about there being so much money and not being as fascinating anymore is if you look at Michael Jordan and the Bulls and Magic Johnson and the Lakers, they really did not make a whole lot of money until the very end of their career with their respected teams. And now you just have all these guys making so much bread, and it's just very, very interesting, very fascinating. But the NBA is it's pivoted. We're in a new era, and it's a non-dynastic era too. We're not seeing as many dynasties. In fact, the last 6 champions, none have gotten past the second round the following year. I mean, I thought the Denver Nuggets were going to be the next dynasty. Nope. And even the Celtics, I thought could. Nope. So we're in a totally new era now, and it's interesting. And it's all, yeah. So in that same breath, the window for championships is very small. They close very fast. I mean, remember when the Seahawks were great and they blew out Peyton Manning and they lost to Tom Brady? Well, that was it. And that Seahawks, those few years, they were amazing. But windows close very fast in professional sports. So it's interesting. And I'm very curious to see how the Celtics are going to respond with Jason Tatum going down the way that he did. So back to the NBA draft. I know I'm going all over the place today, guys. I just have a lot of notes for y'all. The San Antonio Spurs had the number 2 overall draft pick in this year's draft, and I'm very excited to see who they pick or what they do with the pick. A lot of people are speculating that Kevin Durant is going to become the newest addition of the San Antonio Spurs. I'm very excited about that news. I don't want to get too excited yet, but I think that Kevin Durant could likely be the next piece of the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, with KD, Wemby, Fox, and Castle, I mean, they could be a top 5 team in the West. You guys, and I would be thrilled if KD chose to come. The NBA draft is still about 2 weeks out, but I think the news will be leaked before then where KD will be playing next year. All right, let's see what else I got for y'all guys. Yeah, that's about it, you guys. But I'm excited to watch Game 3 tonight. As a basketball junkie, I'm pulling for the Pacers. It's totally a die-hard basketball fan kind of series, but it's very interesting to see where the league is now. I would just like to see more personalities, more captivating personalities in the league, not so business-like. I miss kind of the fascinating, entertaining games, players, and I think we need something like that. I mean, even in the UFC, I mean, Conor McGregor, John Jones, I mean, these are fascinating personalities, and when in their absence, the UFC is just not as entertaining anymore. So I just think we need more of that. But that's it for today, guys. Thank y'all so much, and please like, comment, and subscribe.